Hi, welcome to another exciting edition of Psychology from My Kitchen. This is Mrs. Ryan, and today we are continuing with social psychology. So, today in Psychology Land, we are talking about the social psychology concept of conformity. So, conformity is interesting because in the United States, as very much an individualistic type of society, we tend to look at conformity as being something bad, something negative. We're supposed to be an individual or be our own person. And we tend to look down on this idea of other people who are conforming. But in fact, there's a whole lot of social psychology behind why we conform and different ways in which we conform to other people around us. So, to start with, we deal with a concept that's known as the chameleon effect. So, the chameleon effect refers to a natural tendency that we have to mimic others around us. And some people find themselves to be a little bit better than others at this. So, for example, in the United States, you're probably aware of the fact that people in different parts of the country are going to speak English different ways, and we refer to this as accents. So, in Northwest Ohio, we have particular phrases or words that we might use in order to convey our meaning in English, but we tend to actually pronounce words very, very well as how they're supposed to be done, as opposed to, for example, people in the southern United States who will use phrases like y'all, for example, or if you're ever in New England and people in Boston, for example, and have a very kind of thick accent as well. So the chameleon effect is going to be a concept where when people find themselves surrounded by people who are different than themselves, like in something the way that they speak, they might actually find themselves picking up an accent that they wouldn't normally have. And we sometimes make fun of that person, like, haha, you're speaking not how you're supposed to, when in fact, this person is typically unconsciously conforming to others around them, and interestingly enough, it makes that person better liked. Um, One of the secrets about conformity is that we like what is like us. Um, Most people are hesitant about things or people who are different. And the chameleon effect is an explanation as to why gesturing or accents, the closeness between two people, why those kinds of things a person might change about themselves when they are surrounded by different people, and it's an element of conformity. So the psychologist that we attribute with our major research in conformity is a psychologist by the name of Solomon Asch. And Solomon Asch is well noted for developing an experiment that looked specifically at reasons why a person might conform and to go along with a group's standard, even if the group is significantly wrong. So, in this post that the video is going to be in today, I'm going to include some of Ash's original footage. But his experiment basically went like this. What he did was he brought a participant into a room that had what the participant thought were other participants, when in fact, all the people who were in this room were in on the experiment. And so these other actors, in fact, are known as Confederates in the experiment. So the participant walks into the room that is full of Confederates. They sit around a table and they're told that they're going to be doing an experiment that deals with visual acuity, how well you can see. And basically, Ash is going to put forward posters that have different lines in them, different sets of lines. And you're asked, like, does line one match A, B, or C? And I mean, the answer is really right in front of you. Like it's very much right there. And the Confederates have been told to what they're going to do is they're going to give their answers around the table. And the first couple of ones, the Confederates are going to obviously give the correct answer, right? That like line 1 matches line B, or whatever it might be. But then after a couple of trials, they're going to start getting it wrong. And even though the correct answer is very much right in front of your face and it's very obvious, these Confederates are giving purposeful wrong answers to see if the participant is going to go along with this wrong answer just because everybody else around them is. And in fact, that happened quite a bit. That when the Confederates gave purposeful wrong answers, either you had the participant go along with them and give the wrong answer, or if they did give the correct answer, when they were asked later about the experience, they might talk about how uncomfortable they were by giving the correct answer, even though everybody else around them gave an incorrect answer. So this was a really interesting dynamic that Ash is looking at for conformity, and he's noticing that people are conforming for different reasons. So he's looking at indications that conformity is going to happen. So if you take that adage about you wouldn't jump off a bridge just because everybody else is, like, have your parents ever said anything like that to you before? Actually, you probably would jump off the bridge, but you're only going to jump off the bridge if these specific conditions are going to be met, which is the same thing that happened in Ash's experiment. So if you feel incompetent or insecure about yourself, about your environment, about your knowledge of something, that when we feel incompetent or when we feel insecure about ourselves, we are much more likely going to conform with a group's standard. When we admire the group, okay, when we think that the group has a certain status or a certain attractiveness that we find really compelling, we are much more likely going to conform with the group. Really excellent example of this, if you find yourself with some extra spare time and you have access to the hit movie Mean Girls. There's all kinds of social psychology in Mean Girls. But one of my favorite elements is with conformity, and they're talking about how they take Regina George's tank top and they cut out 2 areas in the chest of her tank top, and she kind of shrugs and just goes with it. That then all the girls around the school are wearing tank tops in a similar way. That because you admire this person, you admire their attractiveness, you're conforming with what that person is doing. So that's going to be another major thing that increases our likelihood of conforming. If we've made no kind of prior commitment to a particular event or to a response, so if we go back to our bridge scenario and whether or not you jump off the bridge, if you've never said to yourself, well, I'm never going to jump off a bridge, and you find yourself in a situation in which people are encouraging you to jump off a bridge, if you've made no prior commitment before telling yourself that you're never going to jump off a bridge, you probably will, or at least you're more likely going to conform with the group. If you're being seen by other people, when other people can see whether or not you are conforming with the group, then you're more likely going to conform with the group. This actually happened with Solomon Asch, in that part of his experiment, he had participants write down their responses. They didn't give their responses out loud in front of other people. And when they wrote down their responses, they were much less likely going to conform, because then their response seemed more secretive. It wasn't being broadcast in front of the other group members. So if I'm being observed by other people, I am much more likely going to conform. If I come from a particular culture that encourages respect for social standards and conformity, I'm obviously going to be more likely to conform. We see this a lot in collectivist societies, where it's much more acceptable to conform and go along with other people, that it is a respectful nature to do something like that, then I'm more likely going to conform with it. There's also a lot of power in numbers, and that if I am in a group of at least 3 or more people, I'm more likely going to conform with the group. If it's just me and another person, or even me and 2 other people, I'm still less likely going to conform. But suddenly, the magic number of 3 really seems to be an element that is going to increase the likelihood that I conform with a particular group. So in Ash's experiment, what he ultimately was able to establish is that there are two major forms of conformity, but what they are referred to as social influence. So conformity and social influence are going to be terms that we use interchangeably. So our two types of conformity, or our two types of social influence, are known as normative social influence and informational social influence. And they work like this. So normative social influence is going to explain that I am more likely going to conform because I want to gain social approval. I want to be accepted by others. And so therefore, I am likely to go along with the group. Or it could mean the opposite, that I fear retribution from others, or I fear losing social approval. So because of that, I might go along with the group. But either way, that's going to be a form of normative social influence. I am conforming to others because I want to be well liked. I want to be accepted. I want to be part of the group. And so therefore, I'm more likely going to conform with the group. So normative social influence is a lot of times what we see like amongst young people in their fashion trends, for example, or their behavior in school. That the reason why they are conforming to a particular group is because they want to be accepted by that group. They want to be part of that group. And so they're gaining that social approval. And so that is a normative social influence. Informational social influence, however, is really different, and it's one that we often don't realize is another form of conformity. And so in informational social influence, I'm going to conform to the group standard because I am accepting the information that comes from that group as reality. So this is something that happens when I respect a group, when I trust a group. And so therefore, I'm going to conform to what that group tells me to because I believe that group to be truthful. I believe in what it is that they are saying. And so I'm not trying to gain social approval. I am conforming because I believe this information to be true. So informational social influence is the type of conformity that we often see from specific types of leaders. So you might see this from like a political leader, for example, or a religious leader, that I am going to conform to what this person is telling me because I believe them to be truthful and I am accepting of the information that they are providing for me. And so therefore I am conforming with the standard that has been provided. Our current situation with everything that's going on with COVID-19 actually has lots of aspects of social psychology to them. And one of those might be mask wearing. So in this video, I'm not wearing a mask because I'm sitting in my kitchen and all of my germs are around me. But when I go out in public, which I really haven't, but in the handful of times that I have, I actually have a single N95 mask that I can wear when I'm out and about. And I have worn it on several occasions. And I have not worn that mask in a way because everybody else around me is wearing masks, because in a lot of instances that wasn't true. But I was wearing a mask because I believed the information that wearing a mask is beneficial, that I am potentially stopping the spread of disease, that if I am infected, then I am less likely to pass it on to other people. But if other people are infected, that they're less likely to pass it on to me, that I am conforming to that standard because I believe that standard to be something that is truthful. So that would be an example of an informational social influence. So my behavior is conforming, but it's conforming because I believe that information to be true. So that would be an informational social influence. So today in our talk on conformity, we've talked about the difference between normative and informational social influence. So until next time, you guys have a great day.